when you build teams, number one, you have to be real and you have to open up and you have to be vulnerable. I really believe in that. You have to sit down and break bread with your team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy O'Rourke.
And I'm Elizabeth Swan.
And we are from GoLean6Sigma.com. And you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast, where we wrestle with tough questions, talk to thought leaders, discuss great books with authors, and get insights from Lean Six Sigma practitioners.
We let you in on helpful apps. We bring you the industry news, and we challenge the status quo so you can build your problem-solving muscles.
We are in March, which that's the month that spring starts, right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, but in my family, we call February and March Farch because it's never ending.
It's never ending. Well, happy Farch.
Happy Farch to you, Tracy. Let's do a podcast.
So tell me, Elizabeth, what's on the menu today?
Coming at you, Tracy. The highlight is today's special, which is your interview with Shane Wentz, former Global Director of Continuous Improvement at Radial. I am psyched for that, Tracy. Then it's Survey Says, where we discuss the results of this month's poll, and the answer is take a walk. I'm going to come back to that. In the news, we'll discuss a recent article by Charles Duhigg, the author of the bestseller, The Power of Habit. And for Q&A, we'll answer a forum question about what makes a good waist walk. It's a great day at the cafe, Tracy.
Nice. I can't wait. Remember to stay tuned for this month's coupon code in order to get a discount on GoLean6Sigma.com online training.
Let's get to the poll.
Surprisingly, sometimes the best way to engage other people is to take a walk, isn't it, Elizabeth?
Yes, but not just any walk. The latest poll question was, what is your most effective method of managing the people side of process change? And here are the results. I send out frequent updates on the improvement effort, came in last at 8%. I ask for feedback on the improvement effort, came in next at 20%, tied with I share success stories and project results, which was also 20%. I include stakeholders on my team, got 23% of the vote. And the winner was I include them on process walks at 28%, almost a third of the vote. And you can see the Pareto chart of the poll on our site. This resonates with me because when I work with team leads, they seem to experience a real shift once they run a process walk. They meet people, they find out issues that they had no idea were happening. They kind of, see how the other half lives, and they make really good connections with people, and I see their confidence in the project really shoot up. What's your take on these results?
I absolutely agree with you. That is exactly my experience when I have facilitated process walks. You can have a group of people that they don't like each other. They wonder why people can't do their job. And then you take them on a process walk and they see the pain people are going through and they just want it to go away. They want to help make pain go away. It is the most, I believe it's the most effective tool in the toolkit, really, to affect change and the way people are looking at a process. It's pretty amazing. It also reminds me of the book Switch, when they talk about one of the things that you need to do to create effective change is to motivate the elephant. And it talks about emotion. What's the emotional tie for people to want to make a change? And when you show people pain in a process, that's pretty emotional. And so it really does work.
Yeah, it's emotional, and it's emotional for both sides of the equation. Like you said, the team leader learns, and then the people in the process feel heard. And that's, I think, a big leap. And people that causes huge relief and hope in other people, also emotional.
Yes. One of my favorite things to do in the entire toolkit, process walks. I love them.
Yeah. So what's our next poll?
So our next poll is, this one is centered around a concept that's central to Lean, the 8 wastes. And the question is, what do you find to be the most prevalent of the 8 wastes? So guess what? You have 8 choices, and you'll use the easy acronym of downtime to remind you of those options: defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, or extra processing. So go ahead and let us know by posting your response on our website. We'd love to see what kinds of waste is out there.
Exactly. I'm Elizabeth Swan, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. We'd love your feedback. Please leave us a review on iTunes or our website, and don't forget to subscribe.
Up next, it's in the news. So let's talk about why people are wealthy, successful, and miserable in the United States.
Yeah, that's the title of an article in the recent New York Times Magazine by Charles Duhigg. He wrote the incredibly influential Power of Habit, a technique for changing and cementing new behaviors that a lot of people in our world cite and use as part of their processes. And this article stemmed from his 15th Harvard Business School class reunion, where he found his classmates were unhappy, regardless of how much money they were making. And that got him curious about kind of the privileged workforce in general, people with Harvard MBAs and the like, these elite levels in the workforce that are making, record sums of money. And he found that they are less happy than they ever used to be. He looked at a couple different studies, and their main complaints were that they were working in jobs that were unfulfilling, tedious, or just plain bad. There was no magic salary at which a bad job became a good job.
Yes, and he was also mentioning that Americans are professionally miserable right now, and the answer comes down to oppressive hours, political infighting, increased competition sparked by globalization, and an always-on culture bred by the internet. And ultimately, this underlying sense that the work isn't worth the grueling effort that people are putting in. So that is really hard, to say that you're not doing something that has purpose or that it's worthwhile. Can be frustrating for people. And what's interesting is that once you can provide financially for yourself and your family, according to the studies, additional salary and benefits don't reliably contribute to worker satisfaction. He mentions in the news, in this article, this guy that makes $1.2 million every year, and he really doesn't like his job. He doesn't find it fulfilling or purposeful. And he found another job that he liked, and he asked his wife, maybe I should take this other job. And his wife just laughed at him because it was like half the money he was making. Like, no, you're not doing that.
I know there's like a trap. There's a trap to, the money itself. Like that affords a lifestyle, and people get very attached to, I don't know, it's a lot of things, social status, everything that's involved. And often it's a spouse that says, we're not going back to what we used to do, forget that.
Yes.
They found people wanted to work along other people that they respected, and they wanted to feel that their labor is meaningful, and they want to feel like they're making the world a better place, even if it's as small as, helping a shopper find the right product at a grocery store. And there was a quote in there. It's from Barry Schwartz. He's a visiting professor of management at the University of California. And he said, you can be a salesperson or a toll collector, but if you see your goal as solving people's problems, then each day presents 100 opportunities to improve someone's life, and your satisfaction increases dramatically. Now, you and I are problem solvers, and that's our business, right? So this quote really got me.
Me too.
Because that's a great purpose, to solve problems for people. And they quoted a study from that researched why some healthcare workers were happier than others, regardless of salary. And they found things like janitorial staff who saw their jobs as not just tidying up, but as a form of healing. And that elevates what you're doing. And you and I deal with this all the time in process change. And we had Karen Ross on here recently, and she pointed out you have to start with purpose. Why are we trying to improve this process, right?
Absolutely. And really, it's not just work related. I mean, I love my job. I love process improvement. Before I did process improvement 20 years ago, I thought there was something wrong with me because I got bored at work a lot. And then I just felt unfulfilled. And then I found process improvement as an industry, and I have never been bored. And I still love my job 20 years later. And I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, but it is. It does feel, this kind of work is purpose work, in my opinion. You're making people's lives better. You're making people's job life better. You're making your own life better. And so, yes, Simon Sinek said it. He made it famous with Start With Why. It was a book that he wrote. And, why are we doing these things? And the author saw his classmates and felt like that they didn't have that connection. Even the investor whose efforts funded pensions so they could impact the lives of retirees, that key connection wasn't being made. And so how do you create that connection so that you feel like you've got higher purpose in what you do? It makes a huge difference.
And it might take you a couple of layers to get that connection, Tracy. Like you're saying, like, okay, you're investing, but you may not even see those retirees. So how do you get connected? How do you go those layers to see you're helping people achieve their dreams? He made another discovery, which was really fascinating, about his classmates that were happy, and they were the also-rans, right? They were people who that Harvard MBA did not get them the jobs they wanted, right? And they were second choice, third choice, whatever, but they had to scramble. And they had to learn early on about the trade-offs that they had to make. And they did not have smooth paths. They did not have these golden tickets. And they actually learned what brought them satisfaction because they had to do that work. And that's why continuous improvement is such a great venture. You learn a ton about people, about processes. It can be a struggle, but you got to start with purpose.
And that's just a good lesson in life in general, not just work, but also having a purpose for your life.
All the way around. This is a great topic. We come back to it again and again. And you are so right, Tracy. This matters for our lives. It's a big deal. Great article. I highly recommend it.
I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. In a short while, we'll get to hear my interview with Shane Wentz, former Global Director of Continuous Improvement at Radial. Next up is a question from one of our listeners.
Okay, Tracy, the question is, what goes into a good waist walk?
Well, that's kind of a tough question to answer on a podcast with only a few minutes, but I'll do my best. So what's a good waist walk? So really, again, I think the biggest challenge we have is people don't see waist. And so it's really training your eyes on seeing waist. And so whether you pick a process to examine waist, so for example, if you're looking at a lunch line and you're trying to observe waste in that, you're looking at how much movement is happening with the workers trying to get the food, or you're seeing that there's people getting bottlenecked at a certain station. So you can observe a waste in a process, or you can just go to a place or a location and observe waste that you're experiencing or seeing in like a supply cabinet. So that's one of the first things is, are you walking a process, or are you actually just going to an area to observe some of the waste? I think it's great. We have checklists that can help out in terms of looking at and observing waste. But again, I say a good waste walk is always about training your eyes, training your mind to see waste. People don't see waste. And so if you get that as an outcome, that is a good waste walk.
Yeah. And I think you brought up two great points there. You could have a waste walk that focused on the process, or you could have a waste walk that focused on an area, or you could have both. And I also think it's interesting, since we're talking about waste walk and earlier we talked about process walks, I just want to point out the difference, that the waste walk doesn't have any interviews. You are truly an observer, and you're using the 8 waste assessment that Tracy just mentioned to take your notes while you're observing. And it's training your eye on those 8 wastes. So another great thing is to review those 8 wastes up front. Like if you've got people that are new to it and you want everyone to go out there and do the waste walk on their own, then start with, let's review each of those 8 wastes that we talked about earlier. And let's give examples of each so people have that in their mind's eye as they go out there and start observing.
Very good insight, Elizabeth. Thank you.
So that was another great question from our forum, and it leads into a webinar that's coming up all about waste walk. So it's a good hot topic these days. It's very basic, not hard to do, but a great source of process observations and opportunities for improvement. It's time to announce the coupon code.
This code is for 20% off any of our Lean Six Sigma training and certification courses: white belt, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, and lean training.
If you've just joined us at the Just in Time Cafe, use coupon code 20HONEY. That's 20HONEY during checkout. Make sure to use it soon since the coupon code will expire on the 15th of April. Coming up next, it's today's special. Tracy, give us a little preview of your interview with Shane Wentz.
Yes, so Shane and his team recently won an award for the best new continuous improvement program at the PEX conference, the Process Excellence Network conference in Orlando, Florida. That's actually where I was introduced to him, and I found him for this interview. So he has spent a lot of time implementing process improvement at Radial, but he's also spent time doing process improvement at other organizations like Siemens, Nike, and the U.S. Army, where he did a $96 million project. So really interesting. What I like about talking with Shane is he's a testament to the fact that Lean Six Sigma and problem solving can apply in any industry.
Great discovery. Looking forward to this one.
Okay, I'd like to welcome our guest for today's special, Shane Wentz. Shane is an operational excellence and business transformation leader. He's a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, and he's also a veteran of the U.S. Army. Shane's last role was the Global Director of Continuous Improvement at Radial. He oversaw the continuous improvement program there for 26 fulfillment centers, call centers, and offices in North America, Canada, and Europe. He was leading a team responsible for implementing the Radial Continuous Improvement System, of which he won an award for with the PEX 2019 Process Excellence Award, which is great. We'll talk about that with him as well. And also, Shane has deployed process improvement at various other organizations, including Nike, Siemens, and the U.S. Army. Welcome to the cafe, Shane.
Thanks, Tracy. Nice to be here.
Yes, so I'm curious to know, you've been doing continuous improvement for many years in many industries. What drives you to do what you do?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I have a passion for helping people. So I'm a firm believer in the people side of continuous improvement. So, starting there and really understanding that, people come in every day trying to do the best they can at work. And then, a lot of times businesses handcuff them with processes that aren't optimized. So where I really get the joy and the passion from is being able to come in and help them, the subject matter experts who do it every day, help them make the process better.
Yes. So you've got a lot of success as well in doing that. So you were recognized by the Secretary of the Army for the best enterprise-level government sector process improvement project, yielding $96 million in savings. What the heck did you do there? And are you going to run for president?
In today's political world, no. Let's start there. Yeah, no. And I think I was really fortunate towards the tail end of my Army career. I was kind of in the right place, the right time, had some great mentors that allowed me to kind of get in at the grassroots of when the Army rolled out Lean Six Sigma, which at least at that point was the largest rollout of Lean Six Sigma ever. I mean, when you think about the Army and how big it is. So I was able to get on the ground level there. I went through and got my my black belt certification and started doing, continuous improvement part-time. And then got my master black belt certification. And then started doing it full time. And one of the first initiatives at that time, if you think of the 2010 timeframe, 2009, 2010, 2011 timeframe, we had a lot of soldiers deployed overseas. And what we were experiencing was when they would come back to the States and to their normal duty station, a lot of them just had some really bad injuries, some that you could see, some that you couldn't see. So what they would do then is, they would go into what we call a non-deployed status, which meant they were still in the Army, they were still in their unit, but they couldn't deploy again with their unit. They couldn't do some of the training with their unit. So really, their career was in limbo. Family was in limbo about, hey, is my soldier getting out or staying in, or what's going to happen? And then the command had, sometimes, up to 10, 20% of their soldiers at any given time would be non-deployed, which put them in a really bad status as far as getting ready to train up and deploy again. So once again, just happened to be at the right place, the right time at the U.S. Army Human Resources Command. And there was a group of really smart people brought together. Not quite sure how I ended up in the mix of that. But I ended up working with them and really got in on the ground level with them of a lot of the data analytics. So we started looking at what the process was at the time, what was the current state. And the ugly truth of it was, at that time, the current state was it could literally take over a year for the Army to get them through a process to figure out if they were going to either stay in the Army, what they're currently doing, stay in the Army and switch to a different job, or, transition out of the Army because their injuries were just so severe. So we put together a team. Once we did all the analytics around it, kind of designed a future state, went through that process. And within about 6 months, we took that from over a year. And the ugly part of it was the range was anywhere from about 2 months to 18 months, right? But the average was probably somewhere around 10 or 11 months. And then we were able to get that down to under 30 days, which really was huge, not just to the Army and reducing the number of non-deployed soldiers, but most importantly to those soldiers and their families to figure out what's going to happen to them. So
Wow.
Really kind of kickstarted my career with a big one. It was kind of all downhill from there.
So that is quite an accomplishment. And I'm sure that there was probably lots of things you discovered while looking at that process that was taking so long. Could you just give us some highlights on what were some of the big nuggets that you guys uncovered that ended up reaping a lot of the reduction in lead time?
Yeah, a lot of it was, so this was in the active Army, it was in the National Guard and the U.S. Army Reserve. And what we found was, as we started pulling data from different Guard units, different Reserve units, different active Army units, we found out that everyone was doing a little bit different. So we'd get a hold of, let's say, the Arizona National Guard and say, hey, can you walk us through your process? We'll document it, show us all the paper trail of what they need to fill out and what everything looked like. Then we would ask the Vermont Guard and the Virginia Guard and do the same thing. And what we really found out was it was all over the place. There was really no consistency in the process. So really one of the big wins early on for us was being able to kind of challenge what was really needed. I mean, some of the states required, 20, 30 plus pages of documents for the soldier to fill out, for them to go through this process, when in actuality, you could do it with less than 5 pieces of paper. So that was a big, kind of a big nugget for us was the variation in the process.
And that's no surprise, absolutely. With such a big organization, that makes a lot of sense. Well, congratulations on that. So then you went on and saved $8 million leading the business process improvement team at Siemens, North American Rail. And then you reduced chargebacks at Nike about $16 million, and then moved on to Radial and successfully saved them $1.8 million. And that's part of you winning the 2019 Process Excellence Network, or PEX Award, for the Best Startup Business Process Improvement Program. So tell us a little bit about that award, and tell us why you believe you won the award, or why Radial won the award.
Yeah, so first I got to tell you the ugly truth about the award. I literally found out about it at the last minute. I was doing a lot of traveling with Radial, going to the different sites, and I got done at one of the sites. I believe it was in Burlington. Oh no, it was in Martinsville, Virginia. I went back to the hotel. Was eating dinner about 9:00 that night. And I was looking through my email, and there was a reminder that, hey, the PEX Awards, if you're going to do any nomination, it was like due the next day. So for the next 2.5 hours, I put together the presentation, sent it off, and a couple weeks later got the note that we were a finalist, and then we got the opportunity to actually go in. I took some of my team members with me in Orlando at the actual World Summit, and we were able to sit down in front of the panel for about an hour and present our program. I think as I look back at kind of everything we did, and what attracted me to Radial is, number one, my boss at the time, Sean McCartney, he was a great leader, and he was one of those that used to do CI. He was a director of continuous improvement at Home Depot earlier in his career. So he was a huge champion of continuous improvement. And as I was going through the interview process, I still vividly remember, he goes, Shane, I'm giving you a whiteboard. create it, draw it, roll it out. It's yours. So literally came in the first couple of months at Radial, spent a lot of time traveling to the sites, talking to the leaders, talking to the managers, frontline managers, and the hourly associates to really understand the culture of Radial. And then from there, started to whiteboard out what this thing called the Radial Continuous Improvement System would look like. Because I don't believe there's a one size fits all. I think you have to make adjustments for the organization. For instance, Radial, had recently been merged from two companies, eBay Enterprises and GSI Commerce, into one. There's a lot of change going on. So, you have to take that into account when you're building out and rolling out the program. So I think really when I look back on why we won the award, I think it was the fact that it was not a one-size-fits-all program, that we created it from scratch. And then initially we went slower to go faster. And what I mean by that is, once we created the program, for a period of about 5 to 6 months, we said there's no Kaizens, there's no just do it, there's no project work. Let's do some fundamental stuff. Let's market, let's brand, let's get the word out about this thing called Radial Continuous Improvement System. Let's do some things like visual management and 5S to kind of get things going and do some training. And then once we get through that evaluation phase, which also included actually evaluating every site for their CI maturity level, once we got through all of that, then did some Hoshin planning to make sure we were strategically focused on the right thing, then we started executing. So I think the great thing about it and what really won the award for us was the fact that if you look at 2018, we did not start doing Kaizens and just do-its and projects until about April of 2018. And between April and October, when we started slowing down for peak, right there during that time is when we got that 1.8 million. So it wasn't even a full year. And I think that, as well as the fact that it was really changed the culture and it was driven by the people, I think in the end, that's what won us the award.
Very nice. So my question for you is, with Radial being so big, so one of the things I hear lots of organizations struggle with is scalability. Creating standards and making it scalable. So with so many locations, what were some of the things that you felt like you did have to do a little differently in each location? Or what were some of the things that were varied based on the maturity level, for example, of the organization or that location? Can you tell us a little bit about some of that customization?
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, when we rolled out visual management, we picked one site and we did the pilot there. And we chose that site for a reason. It was a little bit more on the maturity scale, yet it was actually less mature in certain aspects. So we felt it would be a good pilot of the overall network, if you will. And then once we got within a couple of months and we figured out, kind of what it looked like, what right looked like from a visual management perspective. And when I say visual management for the fulfillment centers, what we ended up getting to was hour by hour goal versus actual, a rolling goal versus actual throughout the day, and then them putting any opportunities they saw. That was kind of how we started. And then later, as we evolved, we had them do a Pareto of opportunities. We did things like putting up there a run chart where they put a dot every day showing where they were as far as productivity. And then we added a quality aspect to it. So really what we did is each site was just a little bit different. And we had to do that for a couple of reasons. One is every site was a little different in their maturity scale. And then the other one is we had different systems. So, at the time we had up to 4 or 5 warehouse management systems, which mean they had different types of data they had access to. So whereas one site you could say, hey, you just need to pull this report, get it every hour and use this. Other sites, it could take 15, 20 minutes of manual work to pull the same data. So we had to be cognizant of that, especially as we rolled this out, because if we asked the leaders to spend too much time manually doing this, then we knew we wouldn't get the buy-in. So we had to make that, we had to be flexible for the site. And then what we counted on happening, and what ended up happening, was the sites figured out what right looked like. So we kind of give them the left and the right bounds. And then they get, we called it Evolution 1 or version 1.0. And then over the next year, what we saw is some sites would get to version 4.0, some sites would get to version 8.0. And each looked a little bit different, but ended up working for them.
Very nice. What would you say was the biggest challenge you encountered in that period of time with going to all the locations, doing the evaluations, assessing maturity levels, coming up with something that will work for the locations based on the maturity levels?
Yeah, I think the most challenging thing would be, one is the fact that it used to be two organizations. So really, you could walk into two different sites about an hour apart, same company, and completely different systems, completely different processes. So, that could be a little challenging. And second is I call it the change curve, right? The organization had been through so much change recently. It literally changed hands twice within about an 18-month period. So you had some folks that were just, I think, a little exhausted of change. So you had to be cognizant of that. You had to be, you had to be careful. You had to watch for it. And then those times where you started seeing that be an issue, you had to quickly address it. And you had to know when to take your foot off the pedal. So your plan said you wanted to be here by this time, but, due to that change exhaustion, you had to let up, and it meant that you were only going to be here. And you had to accept that. You had to brief leadership on it and convince them that it was okay. And you kind of had to keep doing that as you went along. So it was a lot of keeping your finger on the pulse to see how things were going and then adjusting to what that pulse was.
Very nice. So a couple more questions, and I can't believe we're already out of time almost. So regardless of the industry you've been in, whether it has been the shoe or the footwear business or the Army, it's clear you've been able to form teams, relationships, and help organizations embrace change. So what would you say was the biggest contributor in your ability to do something like that, to form a team and to create those relationships and embrace getting organizations to embrace change?
Yeah, I think my time in the Army really helped with that. I really like I like the Army's definition of leadership. I like how the Army really instills teamwork in you. So I think I was able to leverage that experience. I think when you build teams, number one, you have to be real, and you have to open up, and you have to be vulnerable. I really believe in that. You have to sit down and break bread with your team. You have to get to know your team and let them get to know you. I mean, I know, and I probably got this from my Army days, but any organization I've been in, I know personal details about my team down to, birthdays, number of kids, name of kids, things that are going on with their family. And I do it not because I want to kind of oversee all that. I do it because I think that's part of being a real leader. And then, what also comes with that is you need to be open and honest about what's happening in your life. I've been through some pretty challenging times at various points in my career. And I never try to hide that from my team because I try to be open and honest with my team. And I think when you do that, it makes you a much better leader, and it makes that team much more capable of overcoming really anything because they see themselves as a unified team working together that really look out for each other.
Oh, that's very nice. That's a nice sentiment. And I agree. It's, I follow Barry Posner and Jim Kouzes, and one of their mantras is leadership is a relationship. And you can't not be a good leader without having good relationships with people that report to you. So thank you for that. So Shane, tell me, what are some of the interests that you have these days?
Yeah, so I'm excited that my wife and I have decided to go out on our own and open our own consulting company. So we have started a Change in Latitude Consulting, or ACIL Consulting for short. So it's out there. We've got it up and going. I already have a few customers that we're talking with right now. So really, really excited. We're going to offer pretty much 6 different things that we're looking at within our portfolio of offerings. One is full organization, continuous improvement improvement, deployment, implementation, Kaizen facilitation and support. If you just need someone to help you with project management, PM type work, we can help with that. CI training, evaluate current CI programs. If you have a current program and you need someone to come in and do an evaluation and give you some feedback on that, we definitely can do that. And then the last one is strategy development and deployment. And we're looking at reaching both private and public sector organizations.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of experience doing that for a lot of different industries. So that's very exciting. Congratulations. And so if someone were trying to get a hold of you, where would they find you? What is the name of the website?
Yeah, so the website is acilconsulting.com. And then you can get to us that way, or, just go in and do a change in latitude consulting in your search bar, and that should pop up as well. You can also reach out to me individually at shane.wentz@gmail.com. And then the business email is swentz@acilconsulting.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shane.
Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for having a cup of coffee with me at the cafe.
Anytime.
If you haven't already, you should sign up for Elizabeth's webinar, How to Conduct an 8-Waste Walk. Great activities and a great way to get newbies involved. And don't forget, if you have any time on your calendar free in May, you should come on the Japan study trip with us and Katie Anderson.
You definitely want to join us next episode, where I interview Richard Sheridan, author of the new book, Chief Joy Officer. He will lift your spirits and give you great ideas about creating a joyful work culture.
Thanks for joining us for another great hang at the Just in Time Cafe.
See you in 2 weeks.